exploring hidden tombs as Lara Croft, or fighting gangs as Jacob and Eve. Rise of the Tomb Raider and Assassin's Creed Syndicate are two of the most real and action-packed games coming up in the last quarter of 2015. And when it comes to new games, there is often the question of which one is worth investing our time on. New environmental tools to use for your advantage when overcoming challenges is one of the interesting new features that Rise of the Tomb Raider brings in its latest installment. Executing silent kills from water and trees, the use of environmentals like bottles for distracting enemies or for crafting weapons gives the player more possibilities for stealth and combat. In this new release, Lara's survival skills are improved to make a more efficient use of the environments for crafting items, ammunition, improving weapons, or creating new ones. Rise of the Tomb Raider brings back an important element of the saga, big tombs. Unlike the previous installment of the saga, where tombs were more of a side quest focused element, Rise of the Tomb Raider brings back tombs as a core element in the exploration of the game. Tombs have been especially important for the developers to be able to come up with innovative puzzles and exploration strategies. Rise of the Tomb Raider has focused on providing environmentally cohesive, ancient-themed puzzles that will nicely fit the atmosphere that the players experience when entering a tomb. The new release was aimed to keep 2013 reboot's improvements in aesthetics while bringing back some environmental nostalgia from the initial titles of the saga. This meant to make Rise of the Tomb Raider evoke a feeling of adventurousness that comes with being immersed in the exploration of ancient spaces. The developers wanted to create uncharted places where Lara will be the first one to go and tinker with a puzzle or tomb, detaching some of those moments from the combat in the game.
There was a battle here. Armed soldiers against religious pilgrims. The Order of Trinity.
Rise of the Tomb Raider will bring an overall darker atmosphere to the feel of the game. Over the past installments, Lara had to overcome numerous difficult situations and fight with large raids of enemies. Now, Rise of the Tomb Raider shows us a Lara with an important psychological baggage and internal conflicts that she deals with to become the world's most important archaeologist, a person who, in her own words, she is meant to be.
We become who we're meant to be.
Now, talking more about the combat, Rise of the Tomb Raider brings us a more advanced and customizable skill point system to personalize into our playstyle. We will be able to place points into 3 different tiers within our stats tree: Brawler, Hunter, and Survivor. The added complexity of the system is such that some skills are even complementary of each other. Brawler is the skill tree branch that will allow us to improve hand-to-hand combat and healing. Hunting points increase our skills related to hunting, looting, and scavenging faster. And finally, Survivor and Exploration abilities help craft faster and on the run. These abilities will make it possible for us to craft items for defensive or offensive use, even during combat. This expanded customization stat tree gives the player a more diverse set of options than the system used in the previous installment, letting the player personalize Lara to their own game style. Let's take it back a few years to consider the second option I want to present for the last quarter of 2015. Now let's take it back to 1868. 1868 London, at the height of the Industrial Revolution, where the soon-to-be-released Assassin's Creed Syndicate takes place. For the first time, we will be able to interact with a protagonist duo in the history of all Assassin's Creed games. The twins Eve and Jacob will provide the players with a set of different approaches for the challenges that they will experience through the game. This idea originated when the developers were trying to have the players experience the same mission with 2 different characters and see how the outcomes will differ depending on which character they were playing with. And now this organically developed into a new mechanic of being able to play with either Eve or Jacob. This also means that for the first time in the history of Assassin's Creed, players will be able to play as a woman, though there has been news that mentioned that the balance in missions may favor Jacob 75% of the time. This release of Assassin's Creed is trying to bring the franchise back to its roots. And they are doing this by focusing on the single player stealth assassination aspect of the gameplay. One way they have approached to embrace the importance of this premise is by getting rid of the multiplayer mode from previous installments and focusing more on the fleshing out of the single player aspects of this game. The studio of Ubisoft Quebec has poured all the resources into honing the single player campaign. They have done this by improving aspects like personal one-to-one combat, creating different approaches to eliminate targets, and bringing new alternative for traversing the city of London, like hijacking vehicles or using a rope launcher to avoid parkouring through large areas in the city. Now, there is also a great level of character customization. Similar to the systems in the previous installments, players now will have the option to customize the new characters, Jacob and Eve, to satisfy their own personal playstyle. Now, weapons or combat is another aspect that has been thoroughly revisited in Assassin's Syndicate. The design and display of weaponry in the game has a touch of realism. To adapt to the customs of the society in industrial London, characters no longer carry their weapons out in the open, and instead they hide them under pieces of clothing or as a gadget in their complements. Blades are no longer carried in belts like in previous eras, and even though firearms were proliferating during the time, characters in the game will mostly carry them hiding behind a piece of clothing. Some of the new arsenal includes brass knuckles, a revolver, a hidden blade, throwing knives, smoke bombs, hallucinogenic darts, a quirky blade, and a cane sword. Another available device that will allow for a faster traversal of areas and getting out of combat is the rope launcher. Now, the combat is also brought to a higher level of complexity. Similar to the combat in Unity, attackers will not hold back while the player is engaged in battle, and will attack the player if she is at reach with either firearms or sword range attack. The combat in Syndicate is also faster paced, and visual cues to react to enemies are subtle, making large crowds of enemies harder to deal with and bringing a more realistic approach to the combat overall. In this new release of Assassin's Creed, another core mechanic worth mentioning is the development and implication with gangs or syndicates. Gang fights will be a common thing through the streets and along different territories of London. The player will have the opportunity to create and improve their own gang or syndicate, and take part in battles to dominate other territories and take down other gangs. Players will also have the opportunity to personalize a diverse range of aspects of their gangs and be also able to recruit citizens from the streets of London to be part of their own gangs. Allies could potentially be recruited during missions and assigned to the map once takeover of a territory is complete. After taking over a territory, players' gangs' loyalty and morale will increase. Increasing the number of gang members will lead to a lot faster unlocks and more supplies that could later be assigned to achieve personal goals. Now, Assassin's Creed and Tomb Raider are some of the most highly regarded video game franchises, and their upcoming installments seem like they will be able to live to very high standards. But which one are you waiting for? If you had to choose one, which one would you choose to play? So please leave your answer on the comments, and I hope to see you in the next video of the CCFML.